This video will demonstrate how to quickly change the design day parameters within an Energy Plus model such that it can be simulated across multiple different climate zones. So this gets back to our parametric problem, which we showed in the second video. So if we have some building geometries and we want to simulate them across a number of different climate zones, and then also evaluating a number of different design alternatives, it comes out to a large number of models that we would have to simulate, and we can do this very easily programmatically using the Modelkit framework. So this video will just demonstrate how to vary those climate zones quickly and easily, and within the model itself, this just comes down to varying the design day parameters, and then of course when you run the simulation you have to point it to the correct weather file associated with that, with our root file that we've created over the last several videos, and we're going to vary it over the 15 different California climate zones. You'll need to download the California weather files. You can do that easily by searching Energy Plus Weather and then clicking on this North and Central America, and then if we click on USA, there's a section for California climate zones, and this has all 16 of the California climate zones. So if you click on one of these, you can just click download all, but we're actually going to only need the DDY and the EPW files for each of these climate zones. And then once you download those weather files and DDY files, if we go to our Modelkit Catalyst folder, which is in our Documents folder, if we go to the Templates and Net Zero Templates, there's another folder called Templates. We're going to create this folder called Weather, and I've already copied all of the climate zone DDY files and EPW files in this folder, and I've just renamed them cz01.ddy, cz01.epw, and so forth all the way down to cz16ddy. And you don't necessarily have to rename them like this, but I think doing this just makes it easy and convenient for what we're going to do when we're feeding these design day files into our model. So going back to our root file here, which we've developed over the last couple of videos, we're not really going to change much in this root file other than we need to now create a parameter for this location.pxt. So before we just said insert location.pxt, and that is in our Modelkit templates folder. If we just take a look at that real quick, this is essentially the DDY file that we're inserting in our model, and this happens to be for a site location Chicago O'Hare, and it has the design day objects in there. So this would be fine if we just want to simulate it in Chicago, but if we want to simulate the models over the 16 California climate zones, we need to change what's in that text file for every climate zone. So the way that we can do this is create a new parameter, call it location or whatever you want, climate zone, set some default to it, and we're going to set the default, we want to set the default equal to one of these climate zones. So we'll just set the default equal to CZ01. Now the way that we pass these DDY files into our root file is, instead of saying insert location.pxt, we're going to say insert in our weather folder, which we created, insert, and we can use some Ruby syntax here to do the location. So that's going to evaluate the string of our location parameters. So that's going to be CZ01 and then .ddy. So that will insert CZ01.ddy from our weather folder, and that has climate zone 1. It has a run period controlled daylight savings time, and then the sizing period design days for heating and cooling. You can obviously modify this if you only want to include specific heating and cooling design days, and just see what happens when we do compose all. So we still have those 4 case files left over from our previous example: baseline, new name, new orientation, new name, and orientation. So we can clean those up in a minute, but we'll just see what happened here. in our runs folder, if we just look at the baseline, open up that instance.idf, if we go to our site location, it now inserted the site location for California Climate Zone 1 and the associated sizing design days. And you can see that it inserted this template from weather/cz01.dui. And of course, these comments here will only show up if you have the annotations turned on, which is something that we can turn on and off in our modelkit-config file in the Modelkit folder. As you can see here, we have annotate equals true, but we'll just leave the annotations on for now. Okay, that's great. So that just created one for Climate Zone 01. So now you can just change within the root file, just manually change, like, okay, now we'll do it for Climate Zone 2, save that, compose, and so forth. Or, taking advantage of these case files, we can just keep the root file exactly as it is, have a default of Climate Zone 01, and then we can change that location parameter by changing our case files. And this is probably a better way to do it. It's a little more systematic. So we'll just delete these old case files. We're not really using them anymore. And we'll change this baseline case file to, just call this one CZ01. We'll make a copy of that and change this one to Climate Zone 2, and so forth. And so now what we have in these case files, instead of having a blank case file, we'll set that location parameter equal to Climate Zone 01, save that. Now in our Climate Zone 02, save that, change that to Climate Zone 2. We'll just do another save as, and I'm going to get rid of these numbers and just say Climate Zone 3, change that to CZ03. And so this is still a pretty manual way of creating these case files. We're just manually going through and, okay, changing the number here, saving it, doing a save as. After I show you this method, I'll show you how to use what's called a rake file. And the rake file, you can actually create these case files and then compose the models with the case files. And then you can actually simulate the models choosing the appropriate weather file, all programmatically, all very quickly. And I'll show you how to do that after this, but this is kind of the manual way to do it. And if you're only doing it for a few climate zones, you know, it's not really that big of a deal to make 15 text files and just changing this number. But I'll show you an even quicker programmatic way to do this afterwards. So we'll just clean these up a little bit, remove the numbers from the front since they're already in alphabetical order. And again, we can click and drag these over the compose.bat individually, but especially if we have a list of 16 different climate zones, it's probably a little easier to go into our Modelkit bin folder and just hit compose all. And it created those runs. Our runs, so this still has the models left over from our previous example. We can just delete those, and now we have these 3 different models which are the same except for the design days. So we'll just look at Climate Zone 3. If we go to site location, that did insert Climate Zone 3 design conditions, sizing period, design day objects for Climate Zone 3. Now the way to run these actually is a little bit more difficult doing it this manual way, and again I'm going to show you a way to do it with a rake file that makes all of this a lot easier. So if we do this run all, it's actually going to use the weather that was specified in this modelkit-config file. There's a couple different ways to specify which weather file Modelkit is going to use when it runs a simulation. What it's using right now is this modelkit-config file to specify where or which weather file to use. And right now it's in our Modelkit Catalyst example, simple project Modelkit weather, USA, Illinois, Chicago, O'Hare. So that that would be in our Modelkit folder. There's a weather, and it's using this weather file, chicago-o'hare.epw. So since we want to simulate these models in climates that are not Chicago, we want to use these EPW files that are in our weather folder, which we created, cz01 through cz16.epw. The more manual way to do this would just be to change this path here and point it at whatever file we want in our weather folder. So in that case, we'd want to take this path here after Modelkit Catalyst, paste that there, and now for climate zone 1 we'd want CZ01, and we can save that. And now in our runs folder, it always creates these run.bat bash files, and so now if we just drag this one over, it'll start up, and this will simulate with the climate zone 1 weather file. And then of course we'd have to redo this, climate zone 2, save that, and then now we can run climate zone 2. So this is still, it's a little better, but it's still fairly manual in terms of the simulation process. So at this point, to understand how to make this a little more automated is to understand the way that you can use the command prompt to run these Modelkit commands instead of these bash files. And once we understand the commands, we can then incorporate that into a rake file, a Ruby rake file, to make everything even more automated. So the next video, I'll just step through the command line process of how to run these Modelkit commands using the terminal or the command window. And then I'll make a video after that that uses those commands to create a rake file. So it'll actually create all the cases for us, these .pxb files in the cases folder, and then it will compose all the models for us, and then it will simulate all the models with the correct weather file.